Hi, everyone. I'm Inga, and I'm here with issue number 1 of Wabi Sabi Tea Club. It's a newsletter for tea drinkers and the tea curious. And I decided to make a video and audio only version, just in case that's your preferred method of consumption. So yeah, like I said, this is a newsletter for tea drinkers and the tea curious. And sort of even before I come and introduce myself, I wanted to talk about why tea. Tea is more than just a beverage. It's a lifestyle, it's a ritual, a pastime, and it's steeped in culture and history. Tea has delighted our taste buds. It's brought people together again and again over thousands of years. It's inspired philosophy. It's cultivated wellness in our minds and bodies. Tea is that special moment in your day that brings you to the present and really slows down time as you focus on brewing the tea and savoring every last drop. The taste of tea is subtle compared to other beverages, which is part of the reason why I think it's so underappreciated. Tea commands attention by being quiet. This is a newsletter and a video series, perhaps, that celebrates high quality tea and examines the beverage from a bunch of different angles: cultural, scientific, philosophical, artistic, and more. I want this to be fun too, not overly academic. So, as we deepen our appreciation of tea together, my hope is that tea touches our lives in many more ways than one. It enriches our minds, our bodies, and our communities. I really want to tell the stories of tea people, the people that grow, harvest, and process the tea leaves, the tea shop owners who curate and distribute tea to us, and perhaps the stories least told, the tea drinkers, you and me, how we came to love tea, what we enjoyed drinking, what we used to brew tea, and how it has enriched our lives. My hope is to make high quality tea much more accessible to a Western audience, honoring the centuries of tea cultivation, tradition, and culture, while also making tea and tea culture uniquely our own. So here's what I'm thinking for the structure of each newsletter issue. So I always want to include a tea related quote. I think you'd be surprised how much tea has inspired so many things over the years. What I'm drinking, always looking to try something new or go back to old favorites. And so definitely want to share that. And then a deep diver story on one aspect of tea. So I really want that to be the meat of each newsletter. One story, one deep dive onto one of the many aspects of tea. And then if there's something going on in the tea world at this moment, I'll share interesting happenings. If you'd like to share your story around tea, whatever it is, your relationship to it, having grown up with it, or you just came into it, or if you have a suggestion on what to cover, please let me know. I'd love to hear what you want to read about, what questions you have, what you want to hear. And also, I want to know what your favorite tea is. So let me know and please reach out. So without further ado, who am I? I'm Inga. I'm a product manager. I spend my times, actually days, thinking not about tea per se, but I think about personalizing the Spotify homepage. So I think about how to deliver the best music and podcast recommendations to our 300 million people around the world. Um, on nights and weekends, I play with side projects like this newsletter, Plant Parenthood, which is a companion mobile app and community for plant parents, and designing minimalist furniture. But the sort of common thread is like whatever it is I am doing, I'm drinking tea. I have an insatiable thirst for the beverage, learning everything about it, sharing tea with people, trying new tea. When I travel, I visit as many tea houses and tea shops as I can, and I really try to soak in the tea culture of that country. And I think what is so special is that most countries do have a tea culture or a relationship to tea. And there's so many interesting stories and history and culture around that. In particular, when I go to China or Taiwan, I bring an empty suitcase so I can bring back pounds of tea. And so really this newsletter and this Wabi Sabi Tea Club, as I'm calling it, is an outlet for me to share my passion for tea. So since I want to tell the stories of tea, I thought I'd start with a story of my own. It was the first of many experiences which made me fall in love with tea. So I grew up making Taiwanese oolong for my mom and going with her to tea shops to stock up on more. I'm Taiwanese American. Both my parents are from Taiwan, and we'd be on our way out of the house, and my mom would ask me to make a cup of tea for her in a to-go cup, and it'd be a small handful of tea leaves. She was like, grab it from the canister, put it in a cup, and dispense hot water on top of it from our Zoji Rushi. Super simple. And the aroma that's released when that hot water first hits the tea leaves and sort of watching the leaves slowly unfurl really captivated my senses. And I just had this intuition that this was something special and this is something I'm interested in. And so actually that style of brewing tea is called grandpa's style. It's the simplest way to brew tea and it's perfect for drinking tea on the go. So to all the people out there who are like, I don't have time for tea or high quality tea, there's actually really simple ways, like grandpa style. One of my most vivid memories of tea culture, and when I fell in love with it really, was when my family and I visited Alishan. It's a tea mountain in Taiwan that rises 8,000 feet above sea level. I was 10 years old. We took a bus up from the valley, and our driver was deftly navigating narrow twists and turns at the edge of cliffs. When we arrived at the top, the view is breathtaking, both literally and figuratively. There was less oxygen up there. We were so high, again, 8,000 feet above sea level. And it was the first time I'd been driven high enough to be above the clouds. And it was a surreal experience to see the clouds enveloping the tea plantations and farms. So it actually turns out that elevation plays a large role in higher quality and better tasting tea. So the colder temperatures, the rocky soil, the sloped terrain means less water for the plants. This in turn intensifies the existing flavor compounds in the tea. So there's also fewer pests up there because it's a relatively harsh environment. So it reduces the bitter flavor compounds of tea. So that's why you'll see the elevation of the tea mountain specified on many high quality tea packaging. That's usually a great sign. The harder the tea plants work, the stronger and more complex flavors we get to enjoy. So we stayed at Alishan for almost a week. We hiked around the mountain to see the tea farms that covered the peaks of the mountains, and we watched the sunrise above the clouds. And most importantly, we walked around to the small villages and farms and tasted tea. It was one of my first experiences drinking tea the Gongfu way, seated at an elaborate tea table carved from a tree, similar to the one in the photo. My family and I spent hours chatting with the tea farmers and shop owners as they generously brewed and shared their best tea with us. It didn't matter that we were mere strangers, only there for a week. They sat us down like we were family, told us stories, and we bonded over the universal language of tea. Even though I don't have many pictures from this trip, since it was over 20 years ago, before the iPhone, the memory is one of my most vivid. It's when I fell in love with tea, not just as a beverage, but really everything about it, the culture, the rituals, the story, in this unique way of bringing people together. These days, I still visit Taiwan regularly as my dad and his whole side of the family lives all around the island. And every time I make sure to bring an empty suitcase and stuff it full of tea to bring home. One sip takes me right back to that place above the clouds at the grand wooden tea table. So my question for you is, how has your culture and heritage shaped your relationship to tea? I'd love to hear. So now on to the next section, which is the tea quote of the week. And the tea quote that I chose this time is called Ichi Ihui in Chinese. And in Japanese, there's also a version Ichigo, Ichi-e. Um, and it directly translates to one lifetime, one encounter. And this is one of my favorite quotes that was inspired by tea. It was first said by Senno Rikyu, who's a Japanese tea master in the 1500s. Ichi Iwei urges us to remember the unrepeatable nature of every moment. Every time we drink a certain kind of tea, with a certain group of people, in a certain place, we have a certain mood, that moment with those people will only happen like that once in a lifetime. You know, we might see these people socially often, but one day's gathering can never be repeated exactly. And there won't be anything else like it. So let's savor the experience. And that is only related to me so much more because of COVID, where we're all, stuck where we are and we can't see our friends and travel as much as we could before. And even if it's temporary, it has really, really sort of made me appreciate the gatherings and the tea times that I have had. So on to the next section, what I'm drinking. So today I'm drinking in honor of my tea story around Taiwanese oolong. I am drinking a Taiwanese oolong, and I brewed it actually kind of an interesting way. So the tea that I'm drinking is this from Song Tea and Ceramics, and it's from San Francisco. They're based in San Francisco, and this specific one is called Mr. and Mrs. Chen's Sequel. And I just thought that that was special because my last name is Chen, and I got my love of tea from my parents. And so this meant a little more something to me. And it's also what Song Tea calls their private room tea, because they have a very limited quantity. And so this is, I'm reading their description, and it says, this tea is from a new collaboration with Mr. and Mrs. Chen, who produced one of our most prized oolongs before the couple were forced to close their garden in 2017. So this tea is their sequel. It's grown on a 1,700-meter garden in Yushan, crafted by Mr. and Mrs. Chen on our behalf and roasted in the San Francisco studio. And they say it has a clarity of flavor, strong aromatics, and a long finish. And the tasting notes for it are nutmeg donut, apple, and corn husk. And so I actually had this tea yesterday, and I had a few steepings of it, like 3 or 4, but it was getting late and I didn't want to consume more caffeine to keep me up. So I put the rest of the tea leaves in my fellow double wall, and I just put purified water in it and put it in the fridge. And so today I get to enjoy the rest of it in a cold brew style. So just pouring a little bit here. And it's still this like really robust color. And it has sort of a sweeter and more floral taste to it when brewed hot. So that's what I'm drinking. It's Song Tea and Ceramics, Mr. and Mrs. Chen's sequel, Taiwanese oolong. So yeah, I would love to hear, your relationship to tea, what you're drinking these days, and what else do you want to hear about? This is really an experiment for me, and really an outlet for me to share my passion for tea. Thanks so much for listening. If you made it all the way through, like I said, would love to hear from you and hear any feedback at all. Thank you so much.